In this video I'm going to show you how to play the urban calculus, known as TUC for short, a playable systems model of urban conflict at the strategic, political, military level. A further video will introduce an alternative way of playing part of the urban calculus using capability cards. When I teach people to play TUC, I usually set the board up and then I play through a single turn with them just watching. That is usually enough to teach them how to play, so hopefully by watching this video you'll be well placed to start playing your own game. As mentioned in part 1, TUC has two sides, the strategic attacker and the strategic defender. It can be played solo, with one player playing both sides, or with one or two players per side. Each side gets one deck of ordinary playing cards, but with the jokers and picture cards removed. If you want to reduce the risk of card counting, you can give each side a 2-pack deck, and the rules offer some other ways to make the cards less predictable. Each scenario sheet defines the target numbers for each of the linkages on the board. The board should be either covered with Fablon, put under Perspex, or have sellotape or clear stickers placed over each of the lettered circles, so that you can change the values from game to game. Use a dry white pen or similar to write all the numbers from the scenario onto the board. The scenario sheet will also specify how many cubes or other counters to place for each side in the following boxes: infantry heavy, armour heavy, fires, societal support, and government will. It may also identify other boxes for cubes. The game looks best if you can use different colours for attacker and defender, and even for collateral and opinion, but that is up to you. Place the turn track marker on turn 1. According to the scenario, place the end ops marker on the stated turn number, and place the ceasefire marker on the stated turn number. Read any of the scenario's specific rules, and also note the end game conditions. The game usually ends by one of the following: the maximum number of terms is reached, the turn counter reaches the ceasefire counter, one side loses all of its combat units, or one side's government will falls to 0. There is a quick reference sheet available. Make sure each player has a copy, but in practice I find it's rarely needed. Make sure the decks are well shuffled and you're ready to play the first turn. So now we're ready to play TUC. We've got the board all set up. On the red side I've got 5 cubes for strategic capability. I've got 5 for fires, 5 for armour heavy, and a total of 8 for infantry heavy units. I've also got a government will of 5 and societal support of 5. On the blue defender side I've got 3 for strategic capability, 5 for infantry heavy, 5 for armour heavy, 5 for fires, and I've got 5 for government will and 5 for societal support. I've also got 2 decks of cards, 1 deck for each side, but just to keep things simple for this solo playthrough I'm just going to do it all off of this single deck. So the first thing we do is assign strategic capability. This can happen simultaneously, but just to make it easier to do the playthrough I'm just going to do it red and then blue. So I've got 5 cubes to allocate. I can allocate up to 2 cubes for each of the individual actions. Obviously the temptation is to go for the easier ones, so I'll go 1 against the enemy's strategic capability, I'm going to go 1 against enemy's global opinion, I'm going to go 1 against enemy's societal support, and I'm going to go 2 for the battleground, so to try and make sure I get the +1 to enhance my rolls on the battleground itself. So now I just deal out the cards for each of those. So for enemy strategic I get 5, so that's a fail. For enemy global opinion I get a 6, which is a fail. For enemy societal support I get a 1, which is not only a fail, but effectively that strategic capability has been compromised, so it can't be used again, so I actually take that cube immediately off the board. And then for the battleground I'm looking for 7s, so I get a 9 and an 8, so although I've got 2 successes, that means I still only get the 1 + 1, and it's a good idea to put that with fires so we remember to use that once we get to the battleground. Then on the blue side, likewise I'm going to go against the enemy's strategic capability, enemy global opinion, and 1 for the battleground. So I'm looking for a 7 for enemy strategic. I'm successful there, so what that does is that removes 1 of the red cubes. I'm looking for an 8+ for global opinion. I failed on that, and I'm looking at a 6+ for the +1, and I failed that. That's the end of the strategic capability phase. If we want to, we can actually sort of move the cubes right back to their starting points now. We tend to leave it set up till the end of the turn, just so we can sort of see the whole picture. once we get to the end. Now we move on to the battleground phase, and we start off with fires. This is now no longer simultaneous, so it's very much red and then blue. In the introductory game, I have to use my fires against any one of the enemy targets. I can't split them between the 3 different target types, and I've got a maximum here of 5 cubes I can use, and in fact I've only got 5 cubes. I'm going to go for a classic counter battery, so we're going to go down here, and what you do is you place your cubes at the intersection of what you're where you're firing from and what you're firing against. Remember, I've got a +1, so typically or normally I'd look for a 5+ to hit. In this case I'm only going to be needing a 4+ to hit, and the enemy is then going to need an 8+ to defend against me. So I've got 5 cards I've got to draw, looking for a 4+. When you draw your cards, it's a good idea to keep 1 stack of successes and 1 stack of failures for reasons you'll see in a moment. So 5 cards, first card is a 7, so that's a hit. Second card is a 1, that's a fail. In this case we're not losing cubes like we did in strategic capability. Third card is another fail. Fourth card is another fail. And the fifth card is a 7, which is a hit. So the enemy, so red rather, has got 2 hits. I can get rid of the failed cards, and to defend against those I'm looking for 8+. So fail, fail. So both of those 2 hits are successful. So what that means, I've lost 2 of my fires, and what we do is we place them into the dashed part of the casualty box. Now normally what we would then look for is, because fires cause collateral damage on hearts, clubs or diamonds, but you'll notice this one box here is shown in green because it's assumed the artillery is firing from outside the city to the enemy's artillery also outside the city, so we're not going to get structural or civilian harm happening in this particular case, so we don't need to test the rest of those cards. Now we move on to blue's fire. They've only got 1 gun left, so in this case they're going to do counter battery, keep it nice and simple. So they're looking for a 4+, they haven't got the +1, so they're looking for 4+ to hit, and the defence is at 8+, the +1 only accounts on attack. So we're looking for 4+ to hit, which we do, and then we're looking for an 8+ to defend, which they fail, and so we've lost 1 of the red cubes. That's casualties. Again, that goes into the dashed box, and again, because this is counter battery, we don't need to check for any collateral damage. We can now move on to the ground battle, and I've got the choice as the attacker as red going first, as to whether I put my infantry heavy units in or my armour heavy units in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put in my armour heavy units, and I'm going to put them against the, try and seek out the enemy armour. So in this case we're going to be hitting on 5+, and the enemy is going to be defending on 6+. So 5 cubes in this case, looking for 5+. So 1 hit, 2 hits, 1 fail, 3 hits, 4 hits, and in fact I need to remember I've got +1, so actually I was hitting on 4+ there. So 4 hits, enemy is defending on 6+. So 1, 2, 3, 4 against each of the hits, defending on 6+. We've only got 1 that we've saved. And so that means we're going to lose 3 of our armour units for the 3 hits that we didn't save. So you can see our casualties are mounting up pretty quickly here. What I do need to do now though is I need to check for collateral damage. So armour causes collateral on hearts and clubs, and you can see here I've got 1, 2, 3 potential 3 collateral damage. So let's put out 3 grey cubes, and what I do is I need to deal a card for each of those. A 1 and a 2 it's civilian harm, 3 up to 10 it's structural damage. So 1, 2, 3 cards, and I've got 1, 2 and a 4 and a 5. So that means I've got 1 that's going into civilian harm and 2 that are going into structural damage. Again, into the dashed part of the boxes, and you can see we've got part of it is red and part of it is blue, depending on who's caused the structural damage. Now it's time for blue to respond. Again, they're going to either only attack with infantry or armour. They've got to attack the enemy armour because that's what's been sent into the city for the fight. So they can't attack the enemy infantry. Obviously if they put the armour in, they've only got 1 card, so actually it's probably a better bet to put the infantry in. So I'm going to put my 5 infantry units in, and I'm going against enemy armour, so that means I'm going into this box here. So it's not against the box that the enemy armour's in, because that would be armour versus armour. It's in this box here because it's infantry versus armour. And you can see here I'm going to hit on 5+, and the enemy is going to defend on 4+. So 5 cards, 1 hit, 2 hits, 1 fail, another fail, and a 3rd hit. So 3 cards at 5+, so 3 hits. Enemy's going to defend at 4+, so 1 saved, 2 saved, 3 saved. So the enemy has saved all of those, and I then need to check for collateral, and you can see for infantry heavy it's only hearts that cause collateral damage. I've only got 1 heart, so I've got 1 cube that I need to send somewhere. So drawn a 5, which means that goes into structural damage. This time it's been caused by blue. And that is the end of the actual battleground fight for this turn. What we now do is we now start to look at all the reverberating damage. Normally start at the top end of the board here. So first of all, I've got some civilian harm here, and you can see this can actually influence global adverse opinion on a 6+. So we dial 9, yep, so that's caused some global adverse opinion. And again, put it into the dashed area, and I can then put that up into the top part of the box. You'll see it also feeds through to the defenders' societal support. They're having civilians killed. You'll notice there is an arrow there that indicates the sense, because some scenarios, the more civilian harm that's inflicted on the defenders, it might actually increase societal support. In this case, we're assuming it's going to reduce it, so we're looking for a 9+, which we get. So again, that means one of these cubes down here. And we put it into the dash space until we remove it from the board, so as to remind us that we need to process it in a moment. Structural damage, let's do the blue one first. So a 9+ to loss of livelihood. No, so it's not sort of impacting some of the longer term recovery of the environment. Obviously it's still structural damage needs to be sorted. And we've got a 9+ going through to global adverse opinion. It's not bad enough for the media to be paying attention to it yet. And then the 2 on the red side, again 9+ is up to loss of livelihood. Yes, we've got one of those. So that promotes that loss of livelihood. And 7+ to global adverse opinion. Yep, both of those cause global adverse opinion. The press isn't too happy with what's going on. So we put 2 yellow cubes there and move those cubes up. You'll notice here that once we get to 5 cubes in this block, we replace it with a disc. And we also place a disc into the rubble area, and that gives a +1 to any defender, not the strategic defender, but any of the defender of any of the individual conflicts, because obviously as the city gets more rubble, the easier it is to hide and to gain protection. So watch out for that, and you'll find as the battle carries on, it gets harder and harder to actually try and defeat the enemy who are actually on the defensive in the city. So that's done structural damage, it's done civilian harm. Let's just do casualties. So I've got 5 casualties here. So we're testing at 9+ against government will, and then 9+ against societal support. So let's do government will first. You'll see here this is why we're using cards, because it's very quick to do 5 tests. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. None of them is over 9+. And then down to societal support, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, none over 9+. So yeah, we've got a fairly high level of casualties, but the society and government is is able to stomach that amount. Because I've got 5 cubes there now, just like with rubble, what we do is we replace that with a disc, and you'll see here I've got 9+. What we're now going to do is we're going to reduce those by 1. So you've got a couple options here. You can either put a marker by it, or seeing as this is Fablon, we might as well do it the easiest way, which is we just actually change the numbers dynamically on the board itself. So in future that test is going to be happening at 8+. On the red side we had a single casualty. 10+ is to affect government will or to affect societal support. Nothing happening there. So that goes up into the top part of the box. Right, again this is reverberating around the system. So you remember how we had our 1 loss here for societal support. So that's an 8+ for that to actually feed through into government will. It's only a 7, so it doesn't feed through, so it just comes off the board. And then we have 3 global adverse opinion up here against red, and you'll see it's a 10 plus for that to affect government will. So 3 cubes, 1, 2, 3. Yep, we've got a 10, and so that means we remove 1 from government will, and we've now dealt with those cubes. And again, you'll see there's a ratchet here that for every 5 we start to reduce that number. Okay, final check around the board. It looks like we've got nothing left in any of the dashed boxes. And the only last thing that's left to do is to work out how long that actually took. So here we've got the time tracker, and we've set in this scenario it's a limit of 16 weeks. To work out how long that turn took is we just deal a single card. Doesn't matter which side does it. We then look whether it's hearts, clubs, diamonds or spades. This is a diamond. So that means that actually that turn took 3 weeks. So we move the week counter up to week 3. And you'll notice underneath the end ops card we've got a ceasefire counter. Once the yellows get to multiples of 5, we do a test to see whether or not that ceasefire starts to creep forwards. And so it may well be that sort of somewhere around week 12 or 13, the actual elapsed weeks hits the ceasefire before it actually gets to the point of hitting end ops. So that's effectively a complete turn of the Urban Calculus. So by all means, sort of download the game from Print and Play, print it out, source some counters to play it with, source a deck of cards, read the rules, read the QRS, but hopefully it's a fairly straightforward game to play, and the emphasis of the game is really about sort of thinking about this model that you've got in front of you. Think about how that relates to real life actions, real life activities. You may well disagree with the numbers that I've put down here, both for this sort of introductory scenario and for some of the other scenarios that you can download. If you do, that's fine. Just change them. That's a great thing about having it sort of on Fablon or on DryWipe, is that you can just make those changes. And certainly when I play it with real players, then a lot of the game is really just about discussing sort of what those numbers are, what those linkages mean, making sure we've got numbers that people feel they're happy with. And then playing through the game to see actually what happens as the game plays out. So with that, I'll finish this video, and by all means watch the 3rd video, which actually looks at replacing the strategic capability piece to a certain extent with a set of capability cards. Thank you.